intending to register it when he went home to dinner, and it had escaped his memory. How he could have been so forgetful he could not think, but he did remember that on going home he had found that winter waistcoat becoming much too warm, and had changed it for a lighter one. Of course, the tender was safe enough. He would hurry home and get it off, and after all it would be in time. The tenders which Steele and Cardyke were inviting had to be delivered by post or by hand at their office in London by 4 o'clock on the following Monday. Heaps of time, if he got the tender off at once, as he would take care to do. The only thing he was afraid of was that Sharman, if he inspected the post office receipt, might notice that the letter had not been handed in on Friday, but on Saturday. However, Sharman would be satisfied, most likely, to hear that the receipt had been pasted up in the book kept for that purpose, and would not even glance at it. And the great thing was to get the tender off, so that it would be in London first thing on Monday morning. Ledbitter lived in a small bandbox of a house, just outside the centre of the town. There was a pleasant odour of beefsteak and onions in the hall when he opened the door, and his wife, on hearing his step, immediately called to him that dinner was ready. But Ledbitter self-denyingly shouted an entreaty for delay and darted up the stairs to his bedroom. He dashed at a wardrobe where he kept his garments, and a moment later began to yell over the top of the staircase. "Fanny, where's that winter waistcoat of mine?" he vociferated. "Where's it got to? You know, the one I took off yesterday noon when I came home to dinner." Mrs. Ledbitter looked out of the back parlour door. "Bless me, Herbert," she exclaimed. "You must be losing your memory. Don't you remember that you told me a fortnight ago that you'd about done with that old waistcoat, and that when you left it off this spring, I could sell it with a lot of old clothes of yours? I sold a whole bundle of stuff yesterday afternoon. And by the by," Ledbitter let out a groan that seemed to shake the house. He made 2 leaps down the stairs. His wife opened her lips to scream, but the scream died as she caught full sight of his white face. You sold it," he stammered hoarsely. "Good heavens! To whom?" "Milson's, of course," answered Mrs. Ledbitter. "But as I was saying..." Ledbitter was already at the door. He was quite deaf and half blind as he dashed to the gate of the little garden and darted into the street. His wife's cry might as well have been addressed to the paving stones. "Herbert! Herbert, come back! I say, Herbert!" she called after him. "If you're wanting..." But Ledbitter was utterly obsessed by one idea, and he ran madly away towards the town. Milson was well known in Walford. He dealt extensively in second-hand clothing. He would buy every and any article, no matter what its age and condition. He gave good prices for what he bought. That was one side of his business. The other was his selling side. It was a mystery to the curious what Milson did with the cast-off garments that he purchased. But there was this fact, that he had always in stock an enormous quantity of second-hand clothes at ridiculously cheap figures, which looked almost as good as new. Cast-off garments went into one department at Milson's, passed through some extraordinary transformation in another, and emerged in a third, looking quite spick and span, carefully cleaned and pressed, and ticketed at prices which encouraged purchasers to buy 6 suits at once. Ledbitter dashed into Milson's main shop and ran up against Milson himself, a little podgy man with a goatee beard and a large cable chain of heavy gold across his ample girth. He buttonholed him without ceremony and made an effort to get his breath. "You bought some cast-off clothes from my wife yesterday," he gasped. "Mrs. Ledbitter, Acacia Terrace, you know." "Quite right, my boy," answered Milson affably. "Price quite satisfactory, I hope." "Hang the price," said Ledbitter. "I want a certain winter waistcoat that was amongst those things. A dark red ground with black spots in it, flannel lined. Must have it. She shouldn't have sold it." "Very sorry, my boy, but it's impossible," replied the second-hand clothes dealer, rubbing his beringed hands. "Odd now, but I sold that there waistcoat as soon as I'd..."